Thank you. Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this meeting of Castle Douglas Common Good Fund on Wednesday, 19th March 2025. I'm not going through the usual palaver. We've been doing this for 5 years. We know how remote participation works. So I'll go on direct to one, settlement and apologies, and Chair's approval of remote participation, which I give.
Thank you, Chair. We have Councillors Howie and Drysdale in the room and Councillor Young on Teams, and apologies from the Community Councillor Martin Fortner.
Thank you, Sean. Declarations of interest? None forthcoming. Very good. Item 3, minutes of previous meeting, 20th November. Pages 7 and 8. Are we happy that that is an accurate record of that meeting?
Happy, Ian.
Thank you, John. Polly, happy
Yes,
with that?
happy, thank you.
Very good. Item 4, Common Good Fund Investment Portfolio Advice. We have online, David, I'm afraid the screen's too far away from me to read out your surname, but could you please join the meeting and give us your presentation?
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, so it's David Hourston is the name. It's a relatively unusual one. It's Orcadian, which is why a lot of people haven't come across it before. Okay, so just by way of an introduction, I work for a company called RBC Brewin Dolphin, and we look after a number of funds for Dumfries and Galloway Council. So we've got some other common good funds, some educational funds as well. And so what I'm here to talk about today is just to introduce the possibility of taking your cash balance that you have just now and potentially investing that in a portfolio of underlying holdings to generate potentially a return which is a bit better than you might be getting sitting in the bank at the moment. So I've prepared a few slides just to sort of introduce myself and the company and the service that we provide to organisations like yourself. And I will try and stick to that 20 minutes. So just by way of an introduction, Bell Laurie, they used to be called, Brewin Dolphin used to be called Bell Laurie. We used to have an office in Dumfries, but the company can trace its roots back to 1762. So a long-established business. We were independent up until 2022, when we were taken over by Royal Bank of Canada. So today, Brewin Dolphin operates as an independent company underneath the Royal Bank of Canada banner. But it does mean now that we have the backing of a very strong parent company, but we still have the local presence here in Scotland. So just some very high-level facts about Brewin Dolphin and RBC. So the total assets under management for the business, just under £60 billion. So quite a substantial presence in the UK. We've got 32 offices around the country. We've got 4 in Scotland. I cover the whole of Scotland as part of the charities team. Royal Bank of Canada is one of the largest banks in the world. Big isn't always beautiful, and importantly, from our point of view, Royal Bank of Canada is a very prudently managed business. It's a very financially strong business, and it does have experience of operating investment management firms in North America. So they've taken us over, as I said, about 3 years ago, and so far there's been very little change on the day-to-day side of things, particularly for us here in Scotland. We can come on to chat about this in a bit more detail. Environmental, social and governance factors. As I suppose as a public organisation with lots of stakeholders, you want to be sure that the investments that you're making are not going to attract any negative headlines or get you into any sort of trouble. And our systems and services very much set up with that in mind. And then a substantial research function underpinning everything. The charity part of the business is a substantial part of the overall organisation. I appreciate a Common Good Fund is not strictly a charity, but you do share many characteristics with charitable funds. I only work with charities, and I've only worked with charities for the last 15 years. And as I said at the start, we do have some other common good funds that we manage investments for. So we do have some experience of working with similar organisations. So that's just a very high level overview of RBC and Brewin Dolphin. Moving on quickly to reserves. So why invest? And the principal reason really is to do with inflation. And what this chart here shows the eroding effect that various levels of inflation can have on the value of your investments over longer timescales. And over 1, 2, 3 years, the impact of inflation can be relatively modest. But if you're looking at that over longer timescales, even inflation at 2.5% can erode almost half the spending power of your money over longer timescales. And so what we're trying to do when we're investing, we're trying to, at the very least, protect the value, the capital value of the investments against inflation. So this is really the principal reason for investing, to make sure that you can support beneficiaries in the future to the same extent that you support beneficiaries today. And one of the ways that we think is quite helpful in terms of looking at your overall reserves. So at the moment, you've got this big bank account staring back at you, 270,000 pounds sitting there. And we try to encourage clients to think about it in terms of different pots. So you're going to have something still sitting in cash. You don't want to invest all your money. Some of it might be needed in 1 to 3 years. Some of it might be a medium-term portfolio, but some of it might be assets that you're never likely to need for any particular reason in the future. So you can take a very long-term view with them. You can invest them with a 10, 15-year view in mind. And as you have the ability to invest for longer, you are able to accept more short-term volatility in the value of those assets to get better returns over longer time scales. And it's really the boxes towards the right of the slide there that we at Brewin Dolphin help clients with long-term assets that can be tucked away to generate returns for the long term and for future beneficiaries. So the team in the service, just very quickly, I am part of a team which specialises in looking after organisations like yourself, charities and institutions, and typically dealing with boards rather than dealing with individuals. And you can see there the team. I've been with Brewin Dolphin for almost 25 years. My colleague Lynn has also been here for a long time, but it is a well-resourced team for the number of clients that we have. And all of our clients are given a lead manager and also an alternate manager as well. So you always have 2 people who are familiar with your circumstances. And if one person can't manage a meeting or they're on holiday or whatever it is, there's always another person, another specialist. So why is it important to have a specialism? You acting in your capacity on the board carry a very different set of responsibilities than if you were investing your own money. You've got accounting things to think about. You've got lots of external stakeholders to think about as well. And so the service that we have is very much set up for boards and the different sets of considerations that they have to consider. And it's very much built around each individual client. We don't have an individual fund or service that we put people into. It's about being able to sit down with each client, treat them as an individual, and build a service and build an investment portfolio around your investments and what you need them to do for you today and as they may change in the future. So again, I mentioned you would get 2 people. If you did decide to go ahead, then I would be your lead manager. And then my colleague James would be the alternate manager. And we put the boring office photographs in there, but we always think it's more fun to put the photographs of us doing more interesting things there. And you can read a bit about our backgrounds and our experience there as well. So what we offer you as a client, so our objective is to just understand you really, to what are your requirements, what do you want the funds to do, and then advise and communicate and report back on how they're doing. So a comprehensive investment management service. We also offer advice on the overall structure of your investments. And as I said there, investment portfolios which are tailored to your individual requirements. We also have a dedicated administration team who again just work for the charity and institutional team. and understand the importance of turning around important and accurate information to the finance teams at the council. And we see it very much as a partnership. We would hope that we would get to know you well and stay with you for the long term, enabling you to focus on the important job of deciding who to benefit from the Common Good Fund. So reporting is important as well, alongside the actual investment of things. So our reporting includes all the information that you would expect it to, quarterly valuations, information about what's done well, what's not done so well, market commentaries as well, the reasons for what we've been doing, alongside all of the accounting information and administrative information that you would expect to see. We do have a dedicated nominee company, so your assets would be held in a company which is separate to Brewin Dolphin. So they would be held in what we call electronic form, and they would sit there, and it's what we call a gross nominee. So anything that we can receive gross of tax, we do receive gross of tax. James and I would come along to the meetings as required to update on the investments, and then we have Jill and Rachel, our dedicated administrators, who would make sure that you have all the information that you need in the background. And between the meetings as well, if anything comes up, you'll have our direct phone numbers and direct email addresses. And we also offer online valuations as well, so you can go on at any time and see what your investments are worth. So investing with Brewin Dolphin, and I don't want to go into huge amounts of detail here, but I suppose what I'm trying to get across is just how well resourced the company is. So it's not just us sitting here in Edinburgh deciding what to invest in. There is a very large investment function behind that. And you can see there we've got analysts based in Europe, we've got analysts based in Asia, and indeed in America and Canada as well. And the research takes place into all the different areas that you would expect that it does. So we have specialists looking at big global events, global strategy. We have specialists looking at different funds that we could invest in, specialists looking at individual companies that we could invest in, and right down to things like sustainable and responsible investment as well. So alongside the team that you would be dealing with on a day-to-day basis, there is a very large research engine behind that. And in terms of what we're looking for, investment, I don't think should be complicated. And this just gives you a very high level, the sorts of characteristics that we like to see in the investments that we think work well for clients in the long term. So simple, resilient business models. We don't want to be investing in companies which are opaque, difficult to understand, industries with attractive characteristics, competitive strengths, strong financial characteristics, and areas where you can look at that particular sector or company and say that in the long term, that is going to be a good place to invest. There is a tailwind for growth. Internal qualities, we want to be able to know that the companies that we invest in, our rights as shareholders are being taken very seriously, and the companies are being managed with the shareholders in mind. A growth mindset, something about the companies that makes them individual, difficult to compete with, valuation that's realistic, not in the dictionary this word, analyzability, how easy is the company to understand, and then of course be comfortable with all the risks. And throughout the entire research process, we do take into consideration environmental, social and governance factors. So that is built into the research as opposed to the research being done. And then looking at these factors at the end, it is very much core to the research process. And again, sticking with that, ESG is important. Using our voting rights is also something which is very important. So as an owner of many company shares, we think it is important that we use our voting rights to try and bring about positive change in the companies that we are invested in. So we do engage with the companies as well. We have a team in London whose job it is to speak to companies' managements and get them to change things that we think they can, which will make them better companies. And as I said, that's something which is very core to what we do. and particularly important perhaps for organisations like yourself with lots of external stakeholders looking in. So getting it right for you, as I said at the start, everything that we do is built around your individual circumstances, and right at the start of the investment process would be the Common Good Fund. So we would agree at the outset what we're going to do with your funds, and then we would agree a risk level that would be appropriate for you, and we would then go and invest the funds in line with our understanding of what you want the funds to do in the long term. And that all feeds through into the research process, although no decision would be taken regarding your investments in London or indeed anywhere else that would automatically affect your portfolio. The final decision regarding everything would always be taken by us here in the Scottish team. It would be us that knows you best, and therefore us that's best placed to make any decisions regarding your investments. So in terms of risk, risk is a spectrum, and at the lowest end of the risk scale, obviously you've got cash. That's where you're sitting at the moment. You know exactly what you're getting with cash. And then as you work your way up, there's different investments that we can look at which carry more risk, so more volatility, but you would expect over the long term to be rewarded for that extra risk and volatility. And so at the highest end of the risk spectrum, we've got equities, company shares, and you can see there is a spectrum going from the lower end up to the higher end. And as I said, the more risk that you take, the more you should receive in return over longer timescales. And so the way that our risk categories work, this is the risk categories we have here. We offer investment management services to charities and common good funds between risk categories 3 and 8. So if we look first of all at risk category 8, that's the high end of the scale. So that's everything invested in equities or company shares. And as we go down the risk categories, the amount that's been allocated to equities goes down, right down to risk category 3, where it's a relatively modest amount, just under 20% invested in equities, with the balance spread across other lower risk investments. And so it would be our job in discussion with you to work out where you sit in this spectrum of risk, where you feel comfortable, where's going to get you the returns that you're looking for. And you can see along the top line there, underneath each risk category, we've got something called a total return. So this is what we think is a reasonable expectation for an annualized return based on each level of risk. So if we look at risk category 6, we think that based on current market conditions and looking forward, it's reasonable to expect that you should get an annualized return of 7.4% a year. Now, that wouldn't be 7.4% every year. You might get 15% one year and you might get nothing the next year. But over the long term, over 10 years, an annualized return of 7.4% is a reasonable expectation. Now, that would come in the form of income. So that you can see there underneath it, the yield, 2.5%, and then the rest of that would be capital growth. So your return would come in the form of income of around 2.5%, and then capital growth on top of that. Fees, I put that in there. We have a standard fee rate for organisations such as yourself. I've based this on an investment of £250,000. And you can see there the fees, we have to be completely transparent. So our fees, we have to pay VAT, unfortunately, on our fees, and then external fund charges. So, for example, if we want to make an investment in property, we can't go out and buy a house or a building. We would use third-party funds which would invest across a number of properties, and we have to pay them to do that. So those fees are shown here as well. And those are the other charges. The only other charge there is a transaction charge from the bank, £15. So the only way we can make your fees go up would be to make the value of your investments go up. So just in conclusion, we have a lot of experience of dealing with similar organisations to yourself. We think the specialism that we have is important. Our aims are your aims. We're here to make sure that your investments complement the ethics of your organisation, so you're getting the returns, but also getting protection against any sort of reputational risk. Combination of investment and relationship management. So we would hope we would get to know you and understand you. I've mentioned the research team, which is extremely well resourced, and the ESG, which is built into it. So an ongoing high level of advice and support for the board. And it's more than just managing your investments. It is advice on overall structure and strategy as well. So I think that's bang on 20 minutes.
Thank you, David, for bringing it in on time. Members, any questions for David?
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. It's very interesting, obviously, looking at investments at the moment with the current market. But I just wanted to ask you a really simple question. I know we can't ask who else invests with you as far as good committees are concerned. But if you pick, say, one of them in South West Scotland, is their yearly return rate always higher than the fee that you charge? Thank you.
So there would be some years that might be negative.
Okay.
We saw that certainly in COVID. There was a very big pullback in markets. And in fact, it might be useful to show you this slide here. So risk category 6 is our most popular. And what we've listed here underneath are some historic asset mix characteristics. So looking back over the last 5 years, risk category 6 client, 7.2% a year. 5% of that has been capital, 2.1% has been income. Now the total gain, 41.5% over the 5-year period. But importantly, the largest fall in value during the period. So the biggest peak to trough fall, 13.4%. And then you would have had to have stayed invested for 23 months after it to get back to the high water mark. So that was during COVID when we saw the very sharp fall and then subsequent recovery. So there would be some years where the overall return was lower, but the more predictable part of the return is the income. So that income yield of about 2.1, 2.2% is reasonably predictable. The capital side of things can be more volatile.
Helpful. Thank you very much.
John, have you any questions?
No, it was an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. I wondered, David, if you could give us a quotation for something like a category 6 risk, and if the common good invested £150,000, I wonder if you could tell us what the fees would be for that annually.
Yeah, so we are slightly restricted in terms of client sizes that we can take on at the moment. Strictly speaking, we do have a minimum of £250,000. There might be a little bit of wriggle room because of the other assets that we have with the council, but I'm not sure it would go as low as £150,000.
Right. Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
No, thank you very much for your time, David. It's something that we'll take into consideration, and I'm sure we'll respond in due course. Thank you.
Okay, if any other questions come up, please do just get in touch.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Are we all happy with that? Do you want to discuss that further? Are we happy to move on to the next item?
Chair, I think we should bring it to the next committee meeting just to discuss as a committee, but I think we need to probably sleep on it after this
I think so.
meeting with the way things are sitting in our worldwide environment at the moment, but it certainly needs to be brought back because the yields over a longer period are certainly quite good.
Very good.
Thank you.
Recommendations were agreed to receive a presentation, which we did, and 2.1 to be agreed to note that the presentation will cover investment options and that the benefits and the risk of investing, and the future meeting of this committee, a decision will be required to be made. So the future meeting will decide on what action to take on that.
I think I think in the last part showed that we don't really have enough money for this type of investment.
I think so, John. The difference between what we're getting at a standard rate from the bank and the investment team is probably open to the charges, because I see the charges that were proposed are about £1,000 more than what we're currently paying. So I think a lot of the benefit would be lost by the charges, but that's something we can discuss at the next meeting. Very good. That takes us on to item 5, Castledouglas Common Good. Q3 monitoring report 24-25, report by head of thriving communities. Members are asked to note. Sean, do you want to lead us through this?
Yep, so members are asked to note the 24-25 period of 31st of December 24, period ending, sorry, the 31st of December 24. So this is for Q3. The current free income is 2,839 available remaining in this quarter, as detailed in 4.1 of your report. Not too much to add to that, Chair.
Very good. Open it up to members. Any questions?
Can I speak, Chair?
Certainly, John.
I found the whole Three Rovers visit to both parks very interesting, and there's something sort of stuck in my head since. You know that Three Rovers purchased the site of the new 3G pitch from the golf club for a nominal amount.
Yes.
Now, that, as you'll know, Ian, used to be the refuse, and it was owned by the council. And then subsequently they found out they were paying a nominal rent per year for their actual pitch and clubhouse, because that's owned by the council as well. I wondered if they were actually sitting on common good land, and I wondered how we could find that out.
It's something that we can task Sean to have a look at, see the origins of the ownership of that land, and ask for it to be brought back to the next meeting.
Thanks, Ian.
Polly.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask on 4.1, the estimated free income remaining is, this is until Q4 Jan to March 2025, is 2,839. We're going to go on to item 6, where we possibly may decide we need some of that free income. But there have been discussions. I was going to bring this in under AOCB, but I think it fits quite nicely in here, everybody, in that there are concerns after what happened in Loch Ken with regards to safety at the loch and the amount of work that's needing done to the wall, and to take away the very dangerous sticking out poles, which is a common good issue for all of us, as that part of the park is owned by the common good. So I was just wondering if we could possibly use some of that free income that's remaining to possibly look at working with Loch Ken Trust for some water safety posters that we've already created in Ward 4 and part of Ward 3 for Loch Ken, which could be easily recreated for our loch, just so that people have an idea of what 3 words, where to get the safety lines, which we've determined this morning can come through the police, the fire brigade and any other emergency services. But it's just to discuss that as a committee and make a decision. Or do we need to take that forward to the next meeting through yourself, Sean, and yourself, Chair, and ask if that money would need to be decided for those posters, because the Loch Ken Trust may be able to contribute something, as they are a charitable commission. So it's just really to discuss that, because that is free income that's there at the moment. So just your thoughts on that, everyone.
I'll just check on with Sean on a governance point of view. Can we allocate money for something which is not on the agenda?
I'd be more comfortable, Chair, if I could go away and come back, to give me some time to do a wee bit of discussion with Loch Ken Trust. See if we can come up with something together. Yeah.
Sounds a good plan. For yourself, can I just check though, would that mean if we're halfway through March now, that money still get carried over and could still be used, or how does it work with common good funds?
Yes, certainly. That's the projected, free income for the quarter, January to March of this year. So yes, there may be slight variation in it by the time we get to the actual sum, but it'll be in and around that figure. Yeah.
Understand. I think we're okay with that then.
Very good. Recommendation members were asked to note.
Well,
sorry.
Sorry, John, are you coming in?
I was coming in to support you, Pauline, but I would go further for the next one. The park's quite tatty at the moment, to be quite honest. And you're right, the wall needs repaired. And I actually wondered if it needs a little white picket fence all the way along the loch side, just to act as a barrier, to make the water safe. At the moment, a child could just run right into the loch. And I wondered if we should quote from some reputable firm, like John Smith Fencing, for that work before the next Common Good meeting. But depends on what you and Ian think.
I'd be reluctant to spend common good money on that. I think there's work has been done in the past from, well, in the days it would have been communities committee at the time. So I think I'd be more comfortable exploring other opportunities before we went into common good funds for that, John, personally.
Yeah, I think can I come in, Chair? I
Certainly.
think you're quite right, Ian, and I take your points on board, John. It was brought up last night we're all taking turns to attend the meeting with regards to the loch in the park, and I attended last night. Now, what I have got from them is they've done a lot of work behind the scenes, and it's a great one-page list of what is needing considered and looked at with regards to the park and the loch, and a lot of research that has been done into water quality, lily pads, buoys that are floating around, lost netting from the hay bales we used to use to keep the algae at bay. So what I think possibly through the chair and through Sean is we possibly need a separate meeting for me to bring. Between last night and today, I haven't had time to send that as an attachment. The committee, through a subcommittee, an independent committee of stakeholders around the law, have compiled that and will be sending that out to us. So I would ask through the chair and Sean that we maybe bring that back to a separate meeting. But again, I would take your guidance. But I think you're right, John, and I do agree with you.
Very good. Sean, you want to come in?
Yep, through you, Chair, certainly happy to do that, Councillor Drysdale. Yeah, it was just on another point I meant to say at the beginning of the report, Chair, just for the avoidance of any doubt that, you know, there's no decision being asked of members today around property. So just around 4.2 there, just, you know, this is purely a monitoring report, finance monitoring report. So any, you know, a request around the disposal of property will be a future committee meeting. But also to kind of a wee bit more detail to that, it would be in principle to sell. It wouldn't be a specific offer that you'd be looking at that stage.
Very good. Polly.
Understand that. That makes it a lot clearer, Sean. Thanks for looking into that for us. I think in 4.2, the second last sentence, to make me feel comfortable as a member of this Common Good Committee, I would prefer if it was reworded to say final approval to dispose or lease. And then there's still that opportunity, and it's up to the Common Good to do the best and make the right decision for the people of Castle Douglas. And then there's no anomaly. Are you in agreement with
Yeah,
that?
I don't have an issue with that.
Thank you.
Very good.
I wonder if that should be added to the recommendations, Ian, then. The inclusion of the words or lease.
So a 2.3, an extra recommendation. Are you asking?
Yes, I am.
You happy with that,
I'll
John?
certainly take that away into that, Chair.
Yeah, just very good. So recommended members asked to note. So we've noted the monitoring report for the period ending 31/12/24, and we've note that the current free income is 2,839.
And 2.3, that something along the lines of the
Yeah.
property in question would come back to the declared surplus before coming back for final approval to dispose or lease.
Very good.
Thank you. Chair.
Item 6. Responsible fishing at Lochside Park. Report approved by Head of Thriving Communities. Again, Sean, can you take us through this, please?
Certainly, Chair. So this is in response to members' desire for responsible fishing down at Carlingworth Loch. I have a kind of mock-up poster here with some words in the appendix. So yeah, it's just really to ask you to review that today, members, and in particular the kind of content, you know, the words that are used and the kind of the style of messaging that you want to get across, and also to allocate some funds to that. Now, looking at the production of the visitor management posters, we're kind of looking at about £10 each per poster for that kind of metallic style poster that we used. But I couldn't envisage that we would need 10, so it's maybe up to 10, but maybe less than that. So really, yeah, it's really to get your feedback on the content of the poster, if that's along the lines of what members are looking for.
Certainly looks fine to me, Polly.
Yeah, I think the quality and content is excellent, Sean, and I'd like you to thank you and your team for working on this. It's something that's been brought up a number of times, and I've experienced myself walking my dog at the side of the loch, and so much so that there was actually a fishing line across as a trip hazard as well. So hopefully, if they do this and take it forward at a very reasonable cost to the common good, it will offer dog walkers and dogs and wildlife and indeed visitors to the park more safety, and hopefully the fishers, as we call them now, will be more aware as to how to dispose of their items and look after their equipment properly, with all due respect for everybody around the loch and users of the park. The only comment I would make is, and I'm extremely pedantic about these things, I'm sorry, a past life in advertising, we don't need the full stops on posters. It's not a sentence, it's just a notice. Sorry to be anal about that, but I think it's an excellent poster, and you can see that it's the common good that's asking people to be respectful. So thank you for that work.
Very good. John, any comments?
I was actually wondering if the Castle Douglas Common Good Committee should just be withdrawn and just finish it with thank you for being responsible. I don't think many people actually know about Castle Douglas Common Good Committee. They'll say, who are they to tell us? I think it's better without that at the end, personally. But it's an excellent poster, Sean. Thank you.
I'm ambivalent.
I'm ambivalent. I'm
Just
easy either way, whatever.
Yep.
Very good. So we've reviewed, made amendments, as agreed, and agreed to fund up to 10 aluminium coated posters. Or should we say agreed to fund up to the sum of £100 and for whatever that accommodates. Quite happy going to £100.
Very much so. Thank you.
John, I take it you're
Quite
happy with that?
Happy.
Very
yes.
good. Item 7, any other business deemed urgent by the chair? I have no other business, so thank you for your attendance and see you in due course.
Thank you. And now get